back to the Journey of the Abandoned House, episode 23. Actually 23 this time. I'm sorry about last week. It was bound to happen. I was going to screw it up, and I did. I'm sorry. Anyway, so this week's episode is brought to you by community. And we'll get into that a lot. But other than that, I would say we dove pretty deep into preparation for sheetrock and spray foam and installation theory. So, without further ado, let's get to it. After I finish putting my stuff away. Well, there's blocking. There's studs are all furred out. And you know those things that deliver electrons? They're installed. Good morning. It's Monday. And it's a chilly one today, man. Winter just came right on back. I think the high for this entire week is going to be 47. Today it started out at 22. Yeah. It's cold again. Gloves are back on. Jackets back on. 2 hats are back on. And today, what are we doing? You see the little horizontal block right there? Well, that needs to be everywhere. And then go around the room, all the rooms, and see in all the corners and all the ceiling joints where the sheetrock's gonna be hung, are there any problems? Is there something to attach a sheetrock to? You know, it's called putting nailers up. I'm gonna show you a detail that I'm having to fight dealing with old framing and new framing. As you can see here, this stud here and this stud here is that this one is overhung this one and it's tilted this way. So as you go up, the stud just becomes more and more proud. So I'm gonna have to cut all that back and make sure it's flush with the other stud. Oh, let me show you another little detail. So as you go up the wall to up the wall this stud here, where it interacts with the header up there, you can see how much more proud it is. Not the new lumber, but the old lumber. The new lumber is much farther up. That's a ceiling plane. The old lumber is about 10 inches down. And so the sheetrock will butt right up to it, but then the header is exposed. And in this space, I don't want that to happen. So I'm gonna have to fur out all the studs in this wall so that we can meet that plane. And I'm gonna fur those out from all of the sticks that I had left over from doing the tapered rips that we made when we furred out the kitchen wall. In the last video, I had a comment from S. Ryan about the staircase and didn't quite understand why that 1/4 inch fight was as hard as it was. Let me just go through it in this way. So here's the staircase, right? When we did the original dimension, I came up with a scale or a riser height of 6 5/16. And what that means in my head is that the height of every one of these stairs should average 6 5/16. Now you have 3/8 deviation, which means in my head, I could have a step as low as 6 1/8 and as big as 6 1/2. And 6 5/16 is right in the middle of that. And because I was stuck on this scale, this bottom step, I couldn't work it in because it came out as 6 5/8 is the closest I could get. And so it wasn't going to work. But I went through and I measured all the treads that I had, and 6 5/16 was the smallest, and there was only like a heavy 1/16 deviation across the entire staircase. So, I mean, I had plenty of wiggle room there. And that's what you really want to do. You don't want to hit the 6 1/8, the 6 1/2. You want to hit 6 5/16. And so I was really close, but 6 5/16 was my lowest. So in this deviation scale, when I made 6 5/16 at the bottom, that made 6.5 my midpoint, and 6 11/16 my high point. So 6 11/16 is more than 6 5/8. So I was able to have a deviation and be within code, because 3/8 from the top stair to the bottom stair to the top stair, you can have up to 3/8 of an inch deviation across the staircase. Let me know if that cleared it up for you. Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, and I woke up to a little bit of a surprise today. It shouldn't be a surprise, because old man Steve showed up yesterday and said, hey, you're going to get about 12 to 18 inches of snow. I completely blew him off. It was so nice out, and has been so nice. The ground's fully thawed, and snow is completely off my radar. I was wrong. We didn't get 12 to 18 inches, but we definitely got hit. And let me show you. Underneath that pile is a pile of siding that we put out here last week. And then there's an old turtle there in the snow and a blanket. And the neighborhood. And of course, in my infinite wisdom, I went ahead and took home all the snow shovels. The good news is that I prefer to use a grain shovel for cleaning up my piles of sawdust and such. And so I've got that here with me today. So that's what I'm going to use. Clean up this sidewalk. If you know, in the previous episode, I prefer to be a steward to my community and keep the sidewalk clear. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And then after that, I guess we'll just get right back on the blocking, because there's still a ton of that to be done. Didn't get nearly as far yesterday as I thought. I had phone calls and meetings and things to deal with, so yeah. Let's get shoveling. It's like we have a new resident here at Frankie. Not sure how I'm gonna get this guy out of here. Whoa, birdie, birdie. Hey, Robin. Hi, Robin. You know you really can't be here, right? This isn't a good place for you. You just pooped on my insulation. A little known fact, well, maybe it's not that little. I was in Antarctica for 5 years. Well, not quite full 5 years, but the better part of 5 years I was there. And one of the jobs I had was in the air-ground equipment at the airfield. And so I interacted with the fuelies quite a bit. So the people who would fuel up the aircraft. And whenever they trained a new person, they always said, use your fuelie finger to trace out the fuel lines as they're draped on the airfield. And that has just stuck with me for, well, years now. And so when I'm training somebody new, I do the same thing, but I actually catch myself doing it. And this is an absolute perfect example of that process. So we talked about how when you interact in the corners, both on the ceilings and in the walls, you have to make sure you have nailers, right? You have to have blocking for different attributes in the walls, or just for stiffeners, or in the ceiling. And so I caught myself doing this, and I thought it'd be fun to take you guys along and, trace out where all the blocking goes with our fuelie finger. So we're in the primary bath. So we have our midspan blocking, which says stiffeners. And then we have upper blocking for mirror mounting and lower blocking for vanity mounting, which you see that's the actual vanity for this. And then in the corners, we have our nailer here and our nailer here. A heck of a lot of stud work here, which I'm not a fan of, but I can't reframe the whole house. So that's all there. And I was up in the ceiling and I put some stiffeners in there. So those went to there, and then these were already here. So I just went ahead and finished that one out. And then up in there, you can see my clamp. That's there because of that block in the corner over there. That ceiling joist was curled so hard that I used my clamp to pull it straight, and then I nailed it off. And that clamp has been out there ever since, trying to help it relearn its shape so that I can get the last block in here. But with the Fuely finger, go ahead. We got nailer here, midspan blocking, plates top and bottom. All these cripples are in. That's all set. More nailer, more blocking. So I would say the primary is done minus that one block. And then I was going to do the primary bedroom, the same process, but we have this giant mound of insulation that bird ever so kindly pooed on earlier. And my plan for this insulation is, let me show you where there's a potential for heat loss. Now this house is a little bit different. It's not your typical build. So you can't really apply this to most places, but these are sort of details you need to look out for in case you're getting some work done or you're doing it yourself. This house originally had a third story. Now there is a truss that's on top of the floor system that was the third story, and then your roof. So the original floor is still here. The hardwood's still there. Everything's there. It's crazy. And underneath this, in that primary suite, that there is a ceiling system installed. And what happens is, so this is all open to the attic space, and then this is floored in the attic space. Right here, there's a potential for heat loss. And let me show you how. Right through here, I'm going to have an R50 cellulose material. So I'm going to blow it in until it hits the height they required for the R50. Now down here, I'm going to have that same R50. And I'm going to, keep blowing the material in at that same thickness level. So right here, there's a potential for heat loss because this is going to taper off over here. And if I don't get this dimension exactly the right thickness of material here and here, then I'm going to have heat loss. So let's say this is R50 and this heat loss is, say, R35. And so what I'm going to do is fill this cavity here with that R38 batting so that this intersection is now an R73. Then it goes back to R50 here and R50 here. So now this becomes the highest level of protection versus these two sections. Let me know if that makes any sense. Well, I didn't get very far. My phone rang, off I went running. Customers asking me to spec in a new build for him. And so then I had to call my framing buddy and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, this is where we're gonna start up tomorrow morning. morning. So, how'd you like that drive coming in today? Not too bad. A little slippery. Then we ran over to the lumber yard, got stuff we need to finish framing out that floor so we can get all that buttoned up. And on the way back, I saw a state trooper got nailed. Complete T-bone. Whole side of his vehicle's just pushed right in. And the other vehicle ended up in a ditch. Everyone's walking around, so I hope everyone's okay. Outside of that, it's time to get back into the installation. Now we do have a bit of a breakup today because I need to run out and do a blood donation. So I'll probably eat my lunch on the way back in from that. And we'll see how far we get. Having these big interruptions like the phone call last night and then had a Zoom meeting earlier in the week, and it really just breaks up the week a lot, and it doesn't really allow a good flow of production. But, you know, I still have to live my life and still try to run a business while accomplishing this big task. So, without further ado, let's get back in this installation, get that all cut up. Alright, so we're all set with the blocking on the exterior walls. So the next step for the exterior wall is going to be running the electrical. And to do that, you have to have certain factors you have to think about. One being the number of outlets you can have on a given breaker, the distance between the outlets themselves, and layout of the room. Now in this particular project, because I'm still underneath the 2016 code, I get to go 10 feet between my outlets. And if I'm going to do this as cheaply as possible, I should follow that rule to a T. That much less junctions, that much less outlets and boxes and installation time. But I'm starting with a primary suite. And this, to me, the aesthetics is more important to me, and the layout on how it works. Now behind me is an interior wall. Now Sean, I just said I'm going to do the exterior walls. I know. But the way I'm going to run the wiring into the room is going to be coming from the basement up into the room. So I might as well just hit this wall real quick and then do the layout throughout the rest of the space. Now my assumption, now we all know how those go, is that this will be the wall that people are going to put their bed against. So what I want to do is evenly space my outlets so that the bed can fit right in the middle. You can have your nightstands on either side, and each nightstand can have its own outlet. So it's going to be really quite simple. Find a center point of the room, or this wall, and then a standard king size bed is, I think it's 80 inches wide. So I will take 40 inches off the center point on both sides, and then put my outlets just to the outside of that, or whatever the closest stud is. Make sense? All right. So 164 inches, that's 82 inches. Yeah. That doesn't happen ever. So 82 inches is my center line. 40 inches is off there. So we'll go with this stud here. Inches there, and we'll go with this stud here. Now I just need to fish a wire down into the basement, run it out to the main distribution panel, and have it come up, and we'll hit this spot. I also need to run through and drill all the holes so we can fish the wire, all the way through the space. We do have to dig through spray foam again. Not happy about that. But, is what it is. Alright, let's get to it. A word from our sponsor, Community. And what I'm talking about there, well, A, I'm not really sponsored. There's that. But I feel like people really want community. And people really struggle on how to go about that, having community. You know, people can be surrounded by people, but yet not feel like they're in a community. In reality, they are. Now, I'm a super independent person, and I like my space, no doubt. But I feel like everybody has a story. And whether they know it or not, they'd like to have that story be heard. So, on a build like this, I have noticed people are really hungry to have someone just to listen. You know, we have this online presence where you have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all these things, but yet people are still really lonely. People are still just not really being heard. And I don't have enough wire to finish this run. You see that? Okay. Pay attention, Sean. All right, so we'll save this chunk for a short run somewhere. All right, what was I saying? Community, right. So whenever I see people walking down the street and I'm eating my lunch out front, I am more than happy to strike up a conversation. And I would say 8 out of 10 people will love to have a little chat. And I have gained some friendships out of this experience. Like the fellow I was talking to last week that was encouraging me on the project. You know, I really appreciated that. All right, that's 12.3. All right, that's 12.2. That's what I want. Where am I getting at with this? Right, how to engage with people. Chances are, just chat. Just have a chat. And each time you have a chat with your neighbor, you'll learn a little bit about them. And the more comfortable it'll become. But trust me, I am not a super outgoing person. At least I wasn't in my past. Where's the beginning of this wire? Oh, there it is. Tell you, if anyone's rewiring a house and they drag their feet on buying this little wire caddy, don't. This thing is awesome. I just bought it, honestly, and I've been doing this a long time. And I can't tell you how much time this little guy has saved. You don't fight the wire. You can have it in a completely different space, a different level of the house even. And you can pull your wire and it just comes along with you. It doesn't fight you. Anyway, community. So the other day, I had the scrap metal guy come up to the house, you know, here at Frankie, and pick up all the scrap metal that had piled up. Because, you know, I hate seeing a giant mess. And I really shouldn't be pulling that much more metal out of here. The majority of the metal I'll be pulling are blades. But when he was up here making all kinds of noise, loading his truck, with a scrap metal, he had a visitor. And that visitor was Steve. And Steve, he heard all the noise, came running up here. Now, Steve lives down below, so he's not the most agile animal. So he jumped in his truck and he shot up here, and he wanted to know what was going on. You know, that's really, really nice of him to take the time to come up here and look out my property and the project. Because, you know, he's affected by this project. Not only, you know, our friendship that he's gained, but, you know, he lives here. And he's had a look at the eyesore of what Frankie has been all this time. And he's really grateful that something like this is happening to dear old Frankie. So, earlier this week, I met with a customer who's becoming a pretty good friend of mine, really. And he has one of those propane patio heaters that he didn't want anymore. Now, it's a perfectly good heater. There's nothing wrong with this thing. It even comes with, you know, almost a full tank of propane. And so he gave it to me. And my first thought is, oh man, what am I gonna do with a patio heater? Now, anyone who knows me knows I don't sit long enough to enjoy a patio. And I know that's a fault of mine, really, and especially where I live, it's a beautiful spot. And I really don't take enough time to enjoy it. Now, my wife does, but there's no way she's gonna burn propane to keep herself warm on a patio. She'd rather put a jacket on. And honestly, so would I. What am I gonna do with this patio heater? And I dragged this thing all the way home, and I unload it, and it's currently in my, oh, what do you wanna call that? My tractor shelter. And so I have this thing sitting there, and that night, after I unloaded it, I was thinking to myself, what am I gonna do with this thing? It's perfectly good. I don't want to just send it to scrap. And, well, I could sell it on Marketplace or Craigslist or whatever. And here we go. Nice used box that I can still make functional. But it's not really my style. I don't have time to deal with Marketplace and all that. Are these 3/8 or 1/2 inch? These are 3/8 ish. All right, here we go. Oh, that won't work. They're on the wrong side. Okay. What do we have here? Another used one. This will work. So, I have this heater, and I have this friend, Steve. Now I can show you. It's right here. Sorry for the airplane noise. Right down there is Steve's yard. Right there is his patio. Now Steve, every now and again, you know, a couple times a week really, he'll have friends over and they just sat on that patio in the cold, enjoying each other's company and visiting and, you know, whatever. And so it dawned on me, give it to Steve. He could use it. His buddies will like it. And everyone's a win-win. Now, what a nice gesture for my little community, right? You never know what will make a person's day. And I told him about the heater, and he's stoked. What I'm trying to say here is, you know, take a moment and learn your neighborhood. Visit with your neighbors, and you just never know what sort of a blessing you could be to those people, or what they could be for you. And that's building a community, helping each other out, whether they ask for it or not. Because honestly, I will probably never ask for it. So another word from our sponsor, Building Community. I want to take a minute to say thank you to Lee for giving me this wonderfully warm lunch on a dreary, rainy, snow-esque day. Having a warm meal on a job site like this, what I've actually never had a warm meal on, is a huge treat, man. Thank you so much. Let me tell you why Lee did this for me. A couple weeks back, he texted me, said, man, I've got a problem. It's a structural issue. I could really use your help. Sure. What do you got going on? Sends me some photos, and it was clear that he had a problem. And I couldn't quite tell what the root cause was until I could actually physically see it. So he set up a time. I shot over to his place after work and had a look at it. And sure enough, he had a heck of a bow in some major framing members that was pushing down a ceiling. And it was all because someone did a bad reno a long time ago. They hacked his main girder apart and just lobbed off the bottom couple inches of it, and it, over time, with enough snow loads on it, just kept pushing harder and harder and harder. And so I know Lee's fully capable and able to do a lot of stuff on his own, and he wanted to tackle the project by himself. So I walked him through it, and I gave him all the pointers I could come up with and how I would approach a project and the materials that I would use. And he did it to a T, and it turned out awesome. And I'm super proud of him for doing the project on his own, and I'm really, really grateful for this lunch. Thanks, man. Man, look at that. Feel the heat just rising right off of it. Look at that steam rolling up off that chili. Love me some hot food. Oh, hot. Whoa. Whoa. Huh. Super convenient to have a nice sandwich shop this close to the build. I usually don't give myself the permission to go down there, but man, this is a great treat. So you can see that the neighborhood has a real mixed bag of some really beautiful old, cure porch style homes that have been fully restored, and some houses that just need a ton of love. So it's one of the reasons why investing on Franklin is a good move on my part. I'm going to help bring the neighborhood up. It's on the up and coming for sure. The other end of the street, which I really have no need to walk down there, but if you guys want me to, maybe I will. There's some already done houses up that way. It got finished last year. And so the neighborhood's definitely coming up. It's a really awesome location. You see the lake is right there. And you have, the sandwich shop right there. Town is in walking distance. It's a cool spot. And right out the front door, you look out. Imagine coming home at the end of a long day and pulling up to that view. I mean, how cool is that? Man, it's an awesome spot. It really is. This pastrami's really good. I love pastrami. Reality is, I just love food. I really do. I'm really grateful that I have the gumption and get up and go that I have. Slowing down. I put on some weight this year.
All I want
Well, how was that? Blocking, electrical, insulation, a little bit of theory, and a little tidbit about me and how I feel about community. And I hope you guys take a moment this week to reach out to a neighbor or a friend or a relative and just see how they're doing. You just might make their day. And I really appreciate you guys joining me on this journey and becoming part of my community online. And it's something I've never really thought about, but I think I'm really enjoying it. With that said, I hope you throw a comment down below. Let me know you're out there. And if you enjoyed, this episode and you haven't seen the other ones before, you can check out the journey over here. Or if you just want to see whatever YouTube thinks you want to watch on my channel, you can, have a look at that. All right, everyone. I'll catch you up next week. And if you